Chris Wallace with WG Financial Group has been helping families here in the Huntsville area plan for a successful retirement. Chris strives to understand all of your financial needs to help guide you on the path to your retirement goals, creating income in retirement, maximizing your savings, and minimizing taxes. Chris has the strategies you need to help you sustain a successful retirement. Welcome to the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace.
Welcome to the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. Today joining me, Chris Wallace, certified financial planner and owner of WG Financial Group, located right here in Huntsville. Legacy planning is not something many people put at the top of their to-do list, but it is something that you can't avoid forever. Chris explains how legacy planning is something that everyone really should consider starting doing sooner rather than later. And stay tuned for when Chris explains what some of your options are when it comes to your planning of your legacy. Chris, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yep, you're welcome.
So many retirees think that they can do their legacy planning later, but that's not really the case. So when do you recommend people start this process, Chris?
Yeah, so I want to make it really clear from the top of the show that I'm not an estate planning attorney. If we get calls, we don't do wills or legal documents. Those are done by attorneys that really do that practice of law. So I just kind of want to make that clear from the outset. But I will say that's part of the things that I'll kind of ask about. So you'd be surprised at how many people come into the office that don't have their legacy planning actually done. And full transparency, we just revamped ours. And I have to be honest with you, I was probably like the biggest baby when I was told that our appointment with the attorney is next week. I'm like, oh man, I got to go see the attorney because it's a lot of work.
I know.
I mean, first of all, you got to think about dying. Like, that's not a lot of fun. That's just not a lot of fun to talk about. And then you got to figure out, who gets what and how you're going to be set up. And, we have a trust and, it's like, it was a lot of work. And then in the last meeting when we were signing all of the documents, like signing tons of documents, I was like, now I know how my clients feel when they come in the office and we're doing their financial planning and they're signing a lot of documents. So, all of that said, it needs to get done because there's a lot of people that come into the office and they don't have it done. So younger families, if you're watching the show today, make sure you're taking care of your estate and legacy planning. I think it's incredibly important to make sure that you have documents done. It involves the whole family. It really does. My daughter went with us when we had our documents done, and she sat downstairs. She didn't come into the office where the attorney was. And we came downstairs, and she says, "Daddy?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Did you write me out of the will?" I said, not yet. So it involves your whole family. So you want to make sure you're sitting down and, just talking about how you really want your legacy to live on. And you do that with, proper planning.
Right. So many people think that legacy planning does not need to be part of a retirement plan. That's a misnomer, because a lot of people say, also the other thing is that legacy estate planning is only for the wealthy. Another misnomer. You don't have to be older. You don't have to be rich to start that planning. So when should you start?
As soon as you get married, like literally, and really and truly, there's a situation where if you've got kids that are of age of majority, and here in Alabama, that's 19, you probably should have, as parents, should probably have some legal documents on your kids. And that's a conversation, again, for you and the estate attorney. But you need to start early, and you need to make sure that you have those documents in place so that, your family, if something happens, you've got everything kind of planned out. So I don't think you can start early enough. And I can tell you, as a certified financial planner professional, when I went through the coursework to become a CFP, they had a whole book on estate planning. Like, we had to learn that. We were tested on it. And the reason for that is there's a lot of people that comes into my office today, a substantial percentage. You'd be shocked to know how many families don't have documents in place. So I just ask basic questions. Do you have these documents in place? No, we don't. Okay, here's a referral. Well, first of all, do you have an attorney? No, we don't. Okay, here's a referral. You can start with this person, but you need to address this situation because it is part of your plan. It's part of your whole entire plan. And I think it's important that an advisor, even though he or she may not be an attorney, ask enough questions to really prompt you to do what you really should know that you should be doing. But again, sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Right. Which is why we're doing this show. Many misconceptions are on married couples. Many couples, think that, if we have a will or if a will is absent, then all the assets and the investments are going to go to the spouse. Okay, but that's not the case. So I want you to explain that, please.
Yeah, not always. And I won't get too much in the legal jargon of this, but if you don't have a will, then the state's going to decide really essentially where your assets are going to go. And each state has its own what they call intestate laws. So, our, advice is to, again, work with an attorney, get those documents set up. But I've run into people before where, and I mentioned this on a prior show, where they say, "Oh, I'm not worried, Chris, we have a will in place." And I'm like, "No, you still need a beneficiary on this account. None of the will take care of that." No, well, it may be in the will, but the will has to be probated. And when the will goes through probate, it's public record. And sometimes money causes people to not be nice, and people tend to fight over money and assets and whatnot. So when the will goes through probate, it opens it up for, some additional cost. Public scrutiny, you have people fighting over assets. It's been much easier if you just put a name as a beneficiary on that account, because I've said this before, a named beneficiary is going to trump the will. So no matter what you have in the will, the named beneficiary is the one that's going to get the asset. So let me make sure I make that really clear. We've got Johnny as the named beneficiary, but Susie's in the will. Now, Susie may be the one that mom and dad want this asset to go to, but Johnny's name is on that account. Guess who's going to get that money? Johnny, because he's the named beneficiary. So named beneficiaries carry a lot of power. So we're big advocates of telling our families to make sure all of their accounts are updated. We know that when they come into our office, any accounts we're managing on their behalf, we are making sure that they're up to date. But accounts that are held away, bank accounts, you want to make sure you have a beneficiary on file. So here's something for the viewer to think about. Your checking and savings account. Do you have a named beneficiary on file? It's called payable on death with the bank. By law, they don't have to ask you for a beneficiary. They can just open that checking and savings without a beneficiary. So next time you go into the bank, I would encourage the viewer to ask their banking person if they have a payable on death on file. If not, I would get a beneficiary on file.
Thank you. Such good insights, as always, important information. So leaving a positive legacy is the goal, right? But some people worry about how much it's going to cost them. Coming up next, Chris explains what you can expect to pay during retirement. And then later, Chris will answer some of your retirement questions in our Q&A segment. Stay tuned for all of that.
You have a club for every scenario. A driver for the long holes. Wedges to get you over the hazards. And a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back nine? Call to set your 15-minute phone visit today, and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
There are some things you can't avoid, but you can avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. You may think your taxes will go down in retirement, but that's not always true. In fact, sometimes your tax liability could go up. We're offering a free guide to show how you may be able to pay fewer taxes in retirement. Learn how different retirement accounts are taxed and options to help make your retirement income more tax efficient, all in easy to understand terms. Download this free tax guide now to help keep what's yours and avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. Congratulations, you did it! You worked hard and saved for retirement, but now you have questions. Could my taxes increase? How will I cover my expenses? Will my income last? You need a strategy to help make sure your hard-earned money goes the distance in retirement. That's why we're offering this free guide designed to help you determine if your nest egg can withstand the challenges of a 21st century retirement. Longer lives, increasing healthcare costs, and taxes are just a few of the possible risks to your income. Get the guide today and take the first step to help your money last in retirement.
You have a club for every scenario. A driver for the long holes. Wedges to get you over the hazards. And a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back nine? Call to set your 15-minute phone visit today, and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
You're watching the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace.
Welcome back to the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Chris Wallace. He's founder of WG Financial Group right here in Huntsville. Legacy planning does not have to be expensive. Chris, is there a cost-effective option for retirees to prepare for legacy planning?
Yeah, so, again, I want to start out by making it super clear. I'm not an estate attorney. I don't give legal advice. I don't do legal documents. I just want to make sure that's clear because it's inevitable. I have somebody call in, and that's just not what we do. I can refer you, but it's just not something that we do. So is there a cost-effective option? I think there's probably a cheap option or cost-effective. Cost-effective is maybe a better way to say it.
I like that, yeah.
Better than say cheap. I think it's probably a cost-effective way to do everything. Is it always the best way? Maybe not. So I'll give you an example. So we have different levels of attorney referrals that we refer out to, depending on the client situation. So when I'm sitting with somebody and I'm analyzing their retirement situation, let's just say that they have a special needs child, for example, and I recognize that and I uncover that in my discovery, and then I make a recommendation that they speak to an attorney about maybe a special needs trust because maybe the child is on disability or something like that. That's not something you want to cut a corner on, right? I mean, that's a very, you're talking about your child's, situation and impacting potential Medicare benefits in the future. So that's not something you want to be cost effective on. So I think there's a situation where if you just need your basic three, your will, powers of attorney, advanced directives, then you can probably do something pretty cost effective. But you have to also be careful if you're doing stuff online. It may be cheaper because so-and-so said, hey, go online and do it. You can do it yourself. And I did it. My grandpa did it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for you. I think when it comes to my specific situation personally, when I'm talking about my legacy, my estate planning, I'm not relying on myself to go Googling myself through that to figure it out. That's not what I went to school to do. Even though there was a course in the CFP course that I took, I'm still not an attorney, and I still don't want to try to make those decisions. I would much rather pay a professional that understands all of the laws in that area and tell them what I'm looking to do and actually pay them to do their job, which is to protect me and my family. So that's the way I look at it. I think enter at your own risk if you try to go the cost-effective route.
Right. Okay. Good point. There are a lot of options that we need to keep in mind. So I want you to talk about why so many people just procrastinate about this important topic.
Well, I told you earlier, I didn't want to do it.
Nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about death and dying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a lot of fun.
No.
Can you imagine the dinner table conversation? Hey, me and your mom, we're probably going to die here in about 10 years. We're going to go get our wills updated. Mm-hmm. It's not a pleasant conversation.
No, my daughter would say, don't go there yet. Don't go there yet.
It's a tough conversation. Mm-hmm. Some of it is just, you don't, talking about death is tough, but then you also don't think it's going to happen like tomorrow. So you're like, I have time. So then you just procrastinate with it. Like I said, I would say probably, and I don't have the numbers on this. This is something I'm pulling out of thin air. But I would say 35% of people that I sit down with don't have wills in place, or their will is older than 10 years old. It's a staggering number. And I'm going, wow. I mean, that's the wrapper. In my opinion, that's the wrapper around everything that you've been working on, your financial plan, your insurance. It's what happens when you die. That estate planning wrapper is kind of that wrapper on everything. It's just amazing how many people don't have those in place. But I think what happens is you do it maybe when you're younger, you get those wills done and the kids are all grown, and then you don't just revisit. It's important to revisit because laws change. You have to do that. Powers of attorney that were good 20 years ago are not good today because the laws have changed. So again, you got to have a relationship with an estate planning attorney. I'm pretty passionate about that.
Right.
Making sure that people do the right thing to protect themselves and their families.
So I have to laugh because we had my sister, taking over if something would have happened to my husband and I, and now our kids are 36 and 32. And so then we were like, okay, we need to change the will because we don't want them moving in with their aunt and uncle. Ha ha. Yeah. So we did.
Just a little weird.
Yeah, we did change the will recently. So we have done that.
So you were guilty up until the will change of what I was talking about, right?
We were that couple.
It's just easy to forget about.
Yeah.
It's kind of on the back burner. The documents are probably in a file somewhere.
Right. Oh yeah, they're in our little, our little, what do you call that? Down in the basement.
The
safe box. Yeah, that we have. Yeah. So, okay, so then when is the best time to update your legacy plan?
So I personally think from the document standpoint, that you should be checking in with your estate attorney every 5 to 7 years. That's what we recommend. Now, as far as the legacy and how assets are going to pass on, when we're talking about IRAs, Roth IRAs, life insurance, you need to start thinking about that literally when you have your first child. And that's when you should be looking at your term life options, because if one of you passes away early, are you going to leave the spouse without any assets? Because you got to remember, in your early 20s, unless you inherit something, you don't have any assets. So you need to have term life insurance to protect the spouse. You also need to have it in there to pay for kids' college and things like that. But as you move along that retirement path or towards retirement, then you don't need some of that term life insurance, and things can kind of change. And now you start looking at, well, now if I pass away, I have enough assets where my wife is protected. But if we both were to pass away, what kind of assets are we leaving to the kids? Is it Roth? Is it traditional? And should we start conversions? And do we want to leave kids a little something extra? Do we think, and I tend to think this way a little bit, that life's going to be a little bit harder for them today? I look at how my daughter is growing up today and how my sons grew up in the time. It's just different than when I grew up. And I would argue that it's actually harder. So is life going to be harder for them? Are taxes going to be more expensive? Do we want to put an extra life insurance policy in place just to give them an extra shot of tax-free money? Because when we die, and if you're in the boat of, I don't want my kids to pay a lot of taxes, when we pass away, our kids are going to be in a higher income bracket, because more than likely, if a parent's like 80, say for example, their kids are probably around 50, well, they're going to be in their peak earning years. So if they inherit an IRA, then they're going to be in a higher tax bracket, because the IRA will be taxed at their income tax rate over that 10-year time frame that you get to leave it in there per the Secure Act 2.0 rules.
Right. You're making me remember when my dad, it was several years actually before he passed away, but he had my sisters and I all go with him. My mother had already passed away. But he met with the attorney and we were present, and he wanted to talk about how he could give us each $10,000 a piece and gift that to us before he even left. So that was something that he did, and really, really cool. And we were able to use that in our own house.
You can gift money today too. Yeah, you can take kids on vacations today, and instead of leaving them stuff too. Sometimes it's better to go ahead and pay for them a vacation, especially when they're younger and they don't have any money. Take them on vacation. They'll appreciate that. Make the memory today.
Okay, you heard it from him. Great insights. Thank you so much, Chris. Coming up, Chris answers some of your questions. The Rocket City Retirement Show continues right after this.
There are some things you can't avoid, but you can avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. You may think your taxes will go down in retirement, but that's not always true. In fact, sometimes your tax liability could go up. We're offering a free guide to show how you may be able to pay fewer taxes in retirement. Learn how different retirement accounts are taxed and options to help make your retirement income more tax efficient, all in easy to understand terms. Download this free tax guide now to help keep what's yours and avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. Congratulations, you did it! You worked hard and saved for retirement, but now you have questions. Could my taxes increase? How will I cover my expenses? Will my income last? You need a strategy to help make sure your hard-earned money goes the distance in retirement. That's why we're offering this free guide designed to help you determine if your nest egg can withstand the challenges of a 21st century retirement. Longer lives, increasing healthcare costs, and taxes are just a few of the possible risks to your income. Get the guide today and take the first step to help your money last in retirement.
You have a club for every scenario. A driver for the long holes. Wedges to get you over the hazards. And a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back nine? Call to set your 15-minute phone visit today and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
There are some things you can't avoid, but you can avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. You may think your taxes will go down in retirement, but that's not always true. In fact, sometimes your tax liability could go up. We're offering a free guide to show how you may be able to pay fewer taxes in retirement. Learn how different retirement accounts are taxed and options to help make your retirement income more tax efficient, all in easy to understand terms. Download this free tax guide now to help keep what's yours and avoid overpaying taxes in retirement.
You're watching the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace.
Now it's time to get to some of your questions that you have for Chris. Are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right. First question comes from Jim in Monrovia, and he says, I'm 65 years old. I wrote my will when I was 50, and there is nothing in my will that I really want to change. So do I still need to update it?
So he said he wrote his will.
He wrote his will.
Does he know it's compliant with all the Alabama state laws?
Do you know, Jim?
Yeah, I don't know. So here's my answer to him. I'm not 100% certain, but I would be sure that I spoke with an estate planning attorney to make sure that what I have would stand up and be okay, in terms of legacy for my family. So I would say get with an estate planning attorney. I don't want to answer that because I'm not qualified, but I would say, hey, I'll refer you out to somebody.
Okay, very good. All right. Next question from Carrie in Huntsville. I am 63 years old. My wife is 65. I have a son. She has a daughter, and then we have 3 children together. We agreed to split our legacy among all 5 of our children in equal ways. What's the best way to plan for this?
That is that's a great question, because now we have a blended family situation, which is incredibly, common today.
Very common.
Very, very common. So if at all possible, and I mentioned this a couple times, maybe already on this show and some in previous shows, that named beneficiary is really, really important. So in this particular case, I think it's important that we try to name as many beneficiaries as possible so that it doesn't leave room to argue. Now, all 5 of them may get along. There may not be any issue. But I promise you, when the emotions of somebody passes away, and that was my mom's assets, that was my dad's assets, things can get kind of tense in some cases. So anywhere you can name the beneficiary, I would probably also speak to an attorney maybe about even a trust, because again, like we talked about wills can be contested. So wills got to go through probate, and those individuals can argue over the amounts if they're not laid out real clearly. Even if they are in the will can still be contested. So I, here again, kind of defer out to the estate attorney if we can't get everybody named as a named beneficiary, and you might even consider a trust, in the case like this.
Right.
But again, an estate attorney is probably a good person to talk to also.
Okay. All right. Very good. Another question. This is from Michael in Harvest. If I don't plan to leave a large inheritance to my kids, what are some options for charitable giving that I could consider for my legacy plan?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's the first time I've ever had a question like this. So if you don't want to leave a large legacy, but you also are charitable inclined, sometimes you can look at something called a charitable remainder trust. That is something that I have found beneficial in my practice for some of my people that I work with. You can also do something called a donor advised fund, and both of those offer tax advantages today, and then also provide that legacy for the charitable organization that you're looking to leave a legacy to. So I think that's maybe something he should take a look at. You can also put as a named beneficiary, you could also put the charity as a named beneficiary as well.
Oh, I love that.
Actually, I have one client. It's really a cool situation. She has a lot of animal charities on hers. No family whatsoever.
Aww.
It's all going to animal and Indian reservation type stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
That's wonderful.
Yep. Every asset. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all going to them.
Yep.
All right. Another question for you is from Laura in Newmarket. My dad died at the age of 67, and he did not leave a will. My mom is 70 and is in senior living and can barely communicate with me. My dad told me he wanted all of his 4 children, including me, to be taken care of, but I don't know how to go about handling his finances when there is no will.
Well, she's going to have to follow the Alabama intestate laws there. So again, probably looking at getting an attorney involved. This is kind of not a good situation. And it's probably outside of my jurisdiction when it comes to all the things you just read to me there. There's a lot going on with mom being in senior living. There is no will, and I'm not understanding finances. And so at this point, I would get in touch with an estate planning attorney. Of course, if we can help refer out, give us a call and we'll do that. But this is really outside of my jurisdiction because there's a lot going on in this particular case.
Right. They're his finances, not even her own personal ones. It's her father's.
Right, because you still got to provide care for mom.
Yeah.
And I mean, but again, Alabama has laws even for husband and wife when you die intestate. There's still laws in place that say that you're supposed to do certain things. So again, I don't want to get into that because, like I said, it's probably outside of my jurisdiction.
All right, so I'm going to do this again. I'm going to ask you one of my own questions.
Sure,
which is my usual one. What are you hearing? What are you hearing from retirees who are coming in right now in the economy that we're experiencing? What's top of their minds?
Yeah, so inflation is one of the big factors that is worrying a lot of people. Obviously people are worried about running out of money, but a lot of people are worried about just long-term inflation and how long is it going to stay elevated, how long are rates going to stay elevated. And the answer is I don't really know the answer to those types of questions. I don't.
You don't know? Come
I have
on,
some
Chris.
speculation. If we look at the country's debt level that we have right now, I don't see how in the world we can continue servicing the debt at these rates. So I think at some point they got to come back down. Do I think they're going to go back down to zero where they were at? I don't think so. I don't know that we'll see rates that low, and maybe again in my lifetime. But I do think they have to come back down. But that's a big concern for a lot of people today. I think a lot of people are also concerned with long-term care. That's a big threat to about 70% of the population. So just next time you walk in a restaurant, just take a look around, and about 70% of those people sitting in there are going to need some level of care. It doesn't mean that they're going to end up in a nursing home, but what it does mean is they're going to need some level of care. So I think you have to look at buying protection for that. And I hear a lot from famous people on the radio that says you really shouldn't start looking at that until age 60. But I completely disagree with that. I think you should start looking at long-term care coverage probably in your latter 40s, early 50s. The reason I say that is at that point, you're still in really good health and you can qualify for a policy, because now they have become very strict in underwriting. So if you're waiting until 60, you may reach a point where you've had a health event and you can't get long-term care. So I think looking at it latter 40s, early 50s is a good idea. I think looking at the different options that are available is important. The other reason I think it's important to look around that 50-year mark is you still probably have 10 or 15 years worth of working life left in you. So you're making a little bit more money. So you can probably pay for a policy a little bit easier. And if you can put it on what they call a 10 pay or a 15 pay where you're done in 10 or 15 years, then you don't have to carry that expense in retirement. So you buy it when you're like 50, pay it off in 10 to 15 years, and then you've got long-term care when you're in your retirement years. The other thing to look at, and I talked about on another show, is an HSA plan. You could also look at that as part of your long-term care funding as well, because as we know, we can pull money out of an HSA for qualified medical expenses tax-free. So those are kind of a couple things that people are asking about.
All right. So if anybody has questions, go see everybody at WG Financial Group, and you can talk to Chris and his team. They'd love to help you out. So we do appreciate all of your answers today. It's been a great show. Thank you so much, Chris. If you want to know ways to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, like I said, reach out now to start planning for your ideal retirement. For Chris Wallace of WG Financial Group, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. We hope you have a great day and an even better retirement.